Welcome to the Saturation Podcast, where we have discussions with church leaders about the life of faith and the mission of the church. My name is Levi. Pancake, serve as a local church pastor, work with Saturation Church Planting, and I am here with my dear friend. We've worked together on a day-to-day basis now, coming up on 12 years. And we have been friends and colleagues for close to 2003. So 22 years. That's
22 years.
It's wild. That's over half my life.
Yeah.
That we've been running together.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jordan Stinziano, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's not half my life. But
it's not even a quarter, not even a tenth.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Jordan, thanks for being on. Want to talk today about a characteristic that we talk often with church leaders, and in our vernacular, it's called laterally postured. So we have, just to set the table, one of the things that we work with church leaders on, we talk about these 7 characteristics of an Antioch church.
You're going to make me name them again?
I don't know. If they want to, basically, there's probably a podcast.
Maybe you should name them.
I can do it. There's a podcast on each of these now. Essentially, they're on the website, all that stuff. But laterally postured is one of those characteristics. First of all, why do we say 7 characteristics of an Antioch church? Why Antioch church?
Just as a side note, I was just in Ukraine, and they had this poster that they had them on, and I was trying to teach off this poster, which is in Ukrainian, and they had little pictures that were trying to indicate. But I kept pointing to the wrong ones because whatever. And they'd be like, no, that's not the... And I was like, I don't know which... I don't know your language. But,
valiant effort. Thank you for attempting.
I tried.
So why Antioch church?
Antioch? So Antioch, in Acts 11 and 13, we see that something going on in Antioch that the Jerusalem church hears about. And so they send Barnabas up there. They send Barnabas up there because Barnabas happens to be from Antioch. And Barnabas, in going up to Antioch, I'm going to go longer than this than you probably wanted, but nonetheless.
All good.
Barnabas, in going up to Antioch, recognizes that the Spirit of God is doing something amongst these, what we would think of as Syrian believers. And so... but the giftedness necessary to do what needs to happen might be beyond him. So he goes and he summons Paul, who's in Tarsus, not quite Syrian, but pretty close. And so Paul comes over, and you see an interdependent team begin to form. Antioch, or Barnabas the encourager, Paul the preacher, apostle. And they spend 3 years building the church in Antioch. Then there's a famine that occurs in Jerusalem, and this young, brand new church, like we would think the mother church is always going to be giving, and the church plant is always dependent. But all of a sudden, the mother church starts going through a famine, and Antioch starts giving back to Jerusalem. And so this is where we get the idea of telescoping, where there's this reciprocating relationship where Jerusalem begins to give into Antioch, and then Antioch begins to give back into Jerusalem, where they're doing the same thing in their cities, and they're giving to one another. And this is how this reciprocating relationship works. And then in Acts 13, you see that Antioch, the leaders, the elders in Antioch are together one day, and the Spirit of God prompts them to release Paul and Barnabas to go into the world. Who's releasing Paul and Barnabas? You're looking like it names the 5 elders. You're looking at 2 of the other ones, being like, maybe we'll give up you 2, right? Like, we're keeping Paul and Barnabas.
Sure.
Right? Like, come on. And yet they, recognizing, whether they understood it or not, they seem to, the Spirit of God in people is our greatest asset. They release Paul and Barnabas to the world. And that's a decision that these men make together under the prompting of the Spirit of God that continues to change our lives to this very day.
That's right.
So when we think about an Antioch church, an Antioch type of church, that's the type of church that I want to be part of. A church that has leaders that are working interdependently together towards the mobilization of the people to be part of everything God wants to be part of that's working around the world. And so these characteristics are the types of characteristics that we think exemplify these types of churches.
That's right. And we in Saturation Church Planting, we are often working with coaching, training church leaders in those characteristics, looking at the scriptures, helping to evaluate their own domains of influence, ministries, churches, and how to align themselves a bit more biblically if they're off kilter there.
Right.
The one characteristic we want to drill down today is the one that we call laterally postured. Can you explain that?
Sure. So laterally postured, is the notion, and it works with the conviction that we have that whatever God's going to do in the world, He'll do primarily through a decentralized structure. Is that a church, rather than being trying to posture itself to grow vertically, it wants to grow laterally, rather than trying to be the big church downtown, which if you go into most small towns, even if you go into most cities, you'll find the big cathedral in the middle of the city, or the big Baptist church, the big First Baptist church. I'm not speaking against First Baptist churches, that I used to work at one. But rather than being that one church that tried to be everything to everyone, the Walmart type church, is that you're really looking to be a church that rather than growing, again, vertically, it seeks to grow laterally, have your influence grow laterally across the city. When we planted Missio, which is the church that you and I serve in Syracuse, our desire was how do we take responsibility, even though at the time there was just 2 or 3 of us. How do we take responsibility for the full evangelization of 500,000 people in a county? Right. Well, that requires a lateral look at a geography, rather than just trying to be in the middle of the thing and have everybody come to one building.
It's not like we're trying to spread out our brand. It's more making the gospel accessible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it requires you to then cooperate with how God has designed His people. He's put His Spirit in His people, and then He's put His people all over a geography. And so it works with how He's designed His people, and it works in, I'm gonna say, in opposition to one of the key corruptions of how the Western church operates. Western church operates with the idea of almost being built like off the temple model in the Old Testament, thinking that the temple was primarily a place of worship. People would come to the temple on a regular basis. They would go there primarily to worship. And so therefore we've built these houses of worship to kind of be modeled after that. But the temple was really, most people would actually only go there once a year. But the temple was really it was the place that God dwelt. And so that's what made the people significant, is that God dwelt in the temple. And now His people are the new temple. And so wherever they go, He goes. And so how do we cooperate with that? And so across every town, every village, every city, every county, every state, every country, His people are all over those places. And so how do we mobilize those people? How do we mobilize strategies? How do we plant churches or expressions of the church in all of those places to saturate those places? how do we partner with existing churches in those places? How do we re-envision churches that are already existing in those places to see that they have a responsibility for the saturation of those places?
Yeah. So what does that look like in some of the places that we have this work in the United States? What do you think this looks like in some global areas as well?
Well, in the U.S., we have been talking about there's just under 3,300 counties in the United States, right? And so what would it look like to have a church in every county in the United States that takes responsibility for its county, and then recognizing that just because you have a church in a county doesn't mean that you've accomplished everything. But if you had a
starting point,
if you had a church in every county that was willing to say, in our county, we recognize we've got X amount of people, and because we've got X amount of people, we want to see a church for every 1,000 people in that county. We're going to either plant, partner, re-envision the churches in this community.
Yeah, revitalize
Towards the full evangelization of this county. And so if you've got a county like our county, 500,000 people, you need 500 expressions of the gospel there. And so that gives us a baseline of just the type of work we need to do locally in that particular county until Jesus comes, right? And so what type of planting we need to do, what type of re-envisioning we need to do, what type of partnering we need to do in order to saturate our county with the people of God, with the gospel, so that every man, woman, and child in that county would have an opportunity to see, hear, and respond to the gospel, so that there'd be accessibility to the gospel in that place. And you want to see that repeated over and 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 over.
Because you got these gospel outposts or lighthouses all throughout a geography. Explain that 1,000 number real quick. Why you say 1,000?
Yeah. So
one church for every 1,000. Or...
Yep. So it's not a number that's original to us, but just the idea of in order to have accessibility to the gospel, what would it look like to have one church for every 1,000 people in a community? It comes out of the Dawn movement with Jim Montgomery and Bob Waymeyer, who was an influence, and those two men influenced Dwight years ago. So it's a missiological number that looks at just trying to have accessibility to the gospel.
I think they said if there's a church of 100, that if sociologically, if one person had about 10 relationships of influence, that a church of 100 could realistically, relationally make the gospel accessible to about 1,000 people.
Yep.
Just crunching numbers at that point.
Yep. And they were number cruncher. Bob was a number cruncher. He was a map guy.
But it's a helpful marker strategically.
Absolutely.
I was hoping you could point me to a chapter or verse in the Bible that said that was the number. But
I can't. Especially since then, when we asked him what happens after 1,000. He said, "You go to 750."
Yeah,
you just keep going down.
But it's the idea of having these outposts that mobilize people that are healthy churches that take spiritual responsibility for those geographies.
Absolutely. And so it gives us a starting point on that, right? And so, and then in the work that I do around the world, it becomes really helpful in envisioning guys to help them start to think about, like, okay, what type of work do we need to do? I was in one place and they were like, well, we need to plant 42 churches. I was like, actually, you need, like, I can't remember what the number was, but it was like 240,000 churches. And they were like, just, bamboozled by that number.
It's a continuous work. I mean, it's like it never stops. It's not like
it's until Jesus comes.
Yeah, you get that. It's complete.
And, it helps.
No declaration of mission accomplished until Jesus returns.
No, we are not getting on the aircraft carrier. It's decadal work as well.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's seeing yourself like McDonald's or like Starbucks. Like, you're going to be everywhere. And it's not so much for your brand. That's not what we're talking about, but it's the church.
Yeah. Starbucks and McDonald's are successful not because there's one large one downtown, but there's one on every corner.
Absolutely.
And so making cheeseburgers accessible or coffee accessible, we're trying to make the gospel accessible through people.
Absolutely.
Through Christ's ambassadors.
Absolutely. And in this task of decentralization, it's not about buildings, right? Like, okay, we need X amount of church buildings, one for everything. But it's really expressions of people. So
sometimes there'll be buildings, sometimes there
there'll
won't.
be buildings, sometimes they'll be in a house, sometimes it'll be whatever. You're looking to decentralize the church in ways that are feasible, so that the people can actually accomplish the task.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to need to raise up leaders in order to make that happen, and you're going to have strategies that are consistent with the localities that you are in and the cultures that you're in order to make that happen as well.
Mm-hmm. In this coaching manual that we work with leaders, we work through it together. It's called The Journey. And in The Journey, the description for this conviction, laterally postured, I got a quote from it, and I'm going to have you just elaborate. It says that laterally postured, this conviction, it supports and engages the work of starting various expressions of the church. Mm-hmm. There's some key words there, but I'll say it again. Supports and engages the work of starting various expressions of the church. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that further?
Yeah, so it supports and engages. So, it's going to encourage you. So if you're working in an area, it's going to cause you to either start new expressions. Now, what are those new expressions? They may be. There's a community in where we live. There's a large pocket of people that live there. That's like, man, at some point we're going to need to start something. Somebody's going to need to start something there. Is it a church? Is it a
small group?
Is it a small group? Well, we've got a small group there. Now that small group's bursting at the seams. Is it a collection of small groups there?
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah.
This conviction, right, supports and it urges us to do something. We have to do something there. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, are there other churches there? Like, it causes us to ask that question. Mm-hmm. To say, like, it doesn't have to be us. Now, maybe there's already something existing there that we're unaware of. So
how can we get behind it? How can we help it in any way, or celebrate it, or encourage it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe they don't understand what we think about, what we believe the scriptures talk about, the nature and purpose of the church. Can we talk to them about that? Can we envision them towards that? Can we work on that together? Can we talk about the 38,000 people that live in that community and what God wants to do amongst those people together? It urges us to do that. Mm-hmm. It urges us to go out into the world and talk about 8 billion people. So I'll be in various places and we'll talk about that circle when we think about our circles of accountability, but that 8 billion circle, and be like, look, everything that you're doing is helping us. Like, it's part of our lateral posture, right? Like, I can't do this, but you can do this because you live here. So how can I help you do this? Mm-hmm. Right? That's part of being laterally postured. We're postured for the world. Mm-hmm. Well, it's an obnoxious statement for a church in the community that we live in, and yet everywhere we go and every place that we're able to help, that's part of that. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Why do we do that? Because we're convinced that that's what God wants the church to be. Can reread this? Yeah,
it supports and engages the work of starting various expressions of the church.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of even the phrase various expressions.
Various.
So we have
groups.
And we have a thinking of our local church that we lead, it is it's going to hit a particular potentially demographic. It is English speaking.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It is there's probably some subcultures within our broader community that it touches. So it's not going to be as accessible. The gospel's not going to be as accessible if we're the only.
And how many other congregations meet in our building?
There are 7 ministries that, in addition to ours, that use the building currently, and there's, I think, 5 different languages that are not all our church. They're different churches with different leadership that we support.
Right. And part of the reason behind that, and when we met with them, it was always, look, there's X amount of people that live in this community, right? We want to see all of them have an opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. There's X amount of languages spoken in this community. You can help us do that by being a thriving congregation towards these people. So this is God's building. Do with it what you want.
Yep.
How can we help you? All right, like, what do you need? And then some of them didn't want to meet in our building, but they wanted to meet in another building or whatever, and we helped that. So, it's what's going to help us get the job done.
Yep.
Various expressions, and some of those are linguistic expressions, some of those are churches, some of those are small groups, some of those are whatever.
Cultural. Yeah. Well, and I think it was in another podcast that we had recorded earlier, but you mentioned the phrase outside in thinking versus inside out. Yep. And I do think that this characteristic
definitely
is related to that. So can you explain outside in versus inside out, what we mean by that?
Other places talks about it being like Z thinking. It's this idea where you begin with the
thinking.
Where you begin with the end
before.
Yeah, you begin with the end and you make decisions off of that. So
you think of there's a leadership book that came out in the 90s. They give you these 5 habits of healthy leadership, and one of them is beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking of Z thinking.
Yeah. I'm in a room today with all these people who think the 90s are like the 1840s or something.
Oh, man. It's
unbelievable.
It was a long, long time ago.
Long
Galaxy
time ago.
far, far away was the 1990s.
So anyway.
Z thinking, outside in, inside out.
Outside in. So that you're making decisions with the whole in mind rather than the particular in mind. So in leading a congregation, most teams, most pastors, most leaders think about that congregation, and they make decisions based upon the congregation. And then once that's taken care of, then they'll maybe move out a little bit, and then maybe they'll move out a little bit, and maybe they'll move out a little bit.
So the presupposition behind that is if we're good, then we can get after a bigger chunk of the pie.
We'll take care of the bigger chunk once everything's good at home. But what we're talking about is, if I'm going to go outside in, then I'm going to make decisions about the whole,
the geography, the spiritual need of that place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then I'm going to mobilize the people towards the whole. I'm going to mobilize the budget towards the whole. I'm going to mobilize the facility towards the whole. I'm going to and so we drew 4 circles, right? Local, regional, national, global. And we make all of our decisions, whether it's a staffing decision, a facility decision, a financial decision, a people decision, towards how does this help us get after these 4 circles? Rather than how does this help just this thing here in this one congregation? And so that's what I mean by outside.
I think when people hear that, maybe one of the charges might be, well, you're neglecting your primary responsibility of your local church. But that's not what we're advocating.
No.
We're advocating sacrifice and remembering why that local church exists.
This church exists.
The church is not the end in of itself. The church exists to be a spiritual representation of that place.
Yeah, it's a vehicle towards the evangelization, in our case, of 500,000, or if you expand it out to 1.2 million people in our region, 19.2 million people in our state, 330 to 350 million people in our nation, and 8 billion people in the world. It's the vehicle.
Yep. Right?
But this is why we exist, so that the glory of God might be known as people come to faith in Jesus amongst 8 billion people. 19.2 million people, 350 million people. right? 1 million people, 500,000 people. Like, that's why that
people can't understand what you're saying. You sound a bit like Rain Man. You're just mentioning numbers, but they're populations of different geographies.
You understand.
I understand. I'm trying to
You
help.
will interpret.
Why
for
did
me.
he just say a bunch of random numbers? It's because those are the populations of different geographies
Right.
that we're taking spiritual responsibility for.
Right.
Are there any other concluding thoughts that you want to say about this important characteristic of an Antioch church?
I think when you go lateral, it really helps you from, if you truly do it, from building your own kingdom. Right? Like,
I think common language, like, are you a kingdom-minded church?
Right.
Just, like, but it does.
So you're, Paul in, I don't know whether it was in this or in another one, I mentioned 1 Corinthians 1-3. He talks about the fact that when he talks about the church, he says that these people in Corinth who are just the craziest Christians that have ever been, except for maybe the people in Syracuse, but that they're saints together with those who, are Christ's people basically everywhere. Right? Like it's a local expression, but it's a global expression. Right? So there is built within the body this lateral aspect that we are one people across the world. And so the nature of the people of God is that they are together around the world. They are laterally postured. We have a tendency, because of, I think, the corrupted nature of the Western church, to go horizontal or to go vertical.
Yeah.
And
to grow our mini kingdom.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a good, healthy check against that.
Yeah. And if we're serious about a particular geography and we're taking spiritual responsibility for that, then every church that currently exists, we need to do everything we possibly can to ensure that they're as healthy biblically as they can be. Now, not everyone wants that input. We can't presume that. But we need those other churches in that geography to be as healthy and biblically successful as possible, while at the same time cooperating with those who are willing and can cooperate to start new expressions. And in fact, to conclude with a quote from that chapter in our coaching manual, this is evangelistic saturation, and it takes place only when we are laterally postured.
There you go.
Thanks for your time, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Saturation Podcast, where we have discussions with church leaders about the life of faith and mission of the church. This podcast is produced by Saturation Church Planting. Saturation Church Planting exists to glorify God through partnering with church leaders in nations, regions, cities throughout the world towards the full evangelization of those places through the mobilization of the church. For more information, please visit scpglobal.org.